Jake Rayner never planned to return to space. Once, he was a respected pilot in the Galactic Navy. Now, he was just a scrap trader, fixing old machines and selling parts on a dusty outer planet. He had seen too much war, too much death. All he wanted now was peace, quiet, and maybe a cold drink at the end of the day. But peace was boring. Jake missed the stars. He missed the feeling of flying through the dark, free and wild. So when he heard about a cheap old ship for sale, he didn't ask too many questions, just enough to make sure it had a working engine, or at least the frame of one. The seller was strange, a nervous old man with shaking hands. "This ship's no good," he said. "Bad luck comes with it." Jake laughed and said, "I'm not buying luck, old man. I'm buying metal." The price was too low, suspiciously low. But Jake didn't care. A deal was a deal. The ship was sitting in the back of a dusty hangar, half covered in old tarps. It was ugly, rusted panels, broken lights, scratches all over. But Jake could see the bones of it. Good bones, strong frame. Deep cargo bay, old military model. With some repairs, it could fly again. Maybe even make him a profit. Jake brought it back to his workshop, a small hangar outside the city. He started inspecting the inside. Cracked wires, loose panels. A nest of something strange in one corner. Nothing unusual for a junker ship. He turned on a small flashlight and crawled into the back cargo section. As he reached the far wall, he heard a sound tap. Tap, tap. Jake stopped, his heart slowed. He wasn't alone. He listened again. Another sound. A soft breath, like someone trying not to breathe. He pulled out his old blaster, just in case, and pushed open a hidden maintenance panel. Behind the panel, in a dark, narrow space, he saw eyes. Two pairs, one large and one small. A woman and a child. They were curled up together, dirty, thin, and scared. Their skin was pale blue, with glowing lines under the surface. Aliens, not the kind you usually see on trade planets. They looked too weak to move. But the woman raised her hand slowly. "Please," she whispered, "don't hurt us." Jake lowered his blaster. He didn't know what to say. Why were they hiding in an old ship? How long had they been there? The woman spoke again, her voice shaking. "We are not criminals. We were running, hiding. Please don't send us back." Jake helped them out of the small space. The child couldn't stand properly. His legs were too weak. Jake gave them water and food, simple things, and watched as they ate slowly, carefully, like they hadn't eaten in days. "What's your name?" he asked. The woman looked at him with tired eyes. "Asha," she said. "And this is my son, Lumo." She hugged the boy tightly, like she feared someone would take him away at any moment. Jake sat down across from them, trying to understand what he had just found. He bought a ship, not two living beings. This wasn't supposed to happen. He wasn't a hero, not anymore. Before he could ask more, a loud knock came from the hangar door. Jake's body froze. No one ever came here, not without calling first. He walked to the door, slowly, carefully, outside. Two men in dark uniforms stood waiting. They looked like private security, not local police. The taller one smiled. But it wasn't friendly. "Evening," he said. "We're looking for something." Or someone, you could say. Jake played dumb. "What kind of someone?" "A mother and her child," the man said. "Dangerous escapees." "Aliens," the other added. "Stole property, fled from a private ship." "Ring any bells?" Jake shook his head. "Haven't seen anyone. Just bought this junker today." The men looked at each other, then at the ship. One of them walked around it, scanning with a small device. Jake felt his pulse quicken. But the scan showed nothing. The aliens must have disabled tracking somehow. "All right," the taller man said. "If you see or hear anything, you call us." Jake nodded, and they left. He closed the hangar door, his mind racing. When he turned around, Aisha was standing there, holding her son, tears in her eyes. "You didn't give us up," she whispered. "Why?" Jake looked at the scared child clinging to her. He didn't know the answer, not yet, but something inside him had changed. "You just made yourself their target too," Asha said softly. And that's when Jake realized this wasn't just a deal anymore. This was the beginning of something big, something dangerous, and maybe, just maybe, something worth fighting for. The lights were off. The hangar was silent. Only the soft hum of the old ship echoed through the empty space. But Jake Rayner couldn't sleep. He stood alone on the balcony of his workshop, watching the night sky. Stars blinked above him like tiny eyes. He used to love the stars. Now they felt like watchers, cold, distant, full of secrets behind him. Asha and Lumo were resting in a storage room he had turned into a safe space. Old blankets, extra pillows, leftover food. Not much, but enough for now still. Jake felt the weight of something he hadn't carried in years. Responsibility. He lit a small plasma lamp and returned to the ship. There was something strange about it. More than the hidden compartment. More than the aliens. This ship had a story, and he needed to know it. Inside the cockpit, he powered up the console and opened the old data logs. The screen blinked, cracked with age, but still working. Most logs were erased, wiped clean. But one file had survived, buried deep in a system folder with no name. Jake hesitated, then opened it. A video flickered on. Dark room, metal walls, cold light, a lab. In the middle, Asha, strapped to a table, wires attached to her skin. Jake leaned forward, his stomach twisting. Men in white coats moved around her, writing notes, poking, testing. A small glass window behind them showed another room, a nursery. Inside was Lumo, floating gently, asleep, except something was glowing in his chest, energy, not mechanical, not human. Jake couldn't understand it, but he could feel it. The boy wasn't just alien, he was something new. Suddenly the screen glitched, another clip played, this time. Alarms were blaring, guards shouting, lights flashing. Asha had broken free, her arms bloody, her eyes glowing bright. She held Lumo close as she ran. Dodging bullets and energy blasts, she didn't fight to kill. She only ran. The video ended. Jake stared at the screen, breathing heavy. This wasn't just a mother and child hiding in a ship. This was a prison escape. And Lumo. He wasn't just some alien kid. He was the reason they were hunted. "Where did you get that?" Asha's voice came from behind him, soft but sharp. Jake turned. And there she was, standing at the door, holding her arms like she was cold. "I didn't mean to spy," he said. "But I had to know." Asha stepped inside, her face tired, her eyes older than they looked. "You saw what they did to us," she whispered. "To him," Jake nodded. "Who were they?" "Private research company," Asha said. "Humans working outside the law. They said they were saving the galaxy. But they were making weapons." Jake looked at her, confused. "Lumo is a child." "Yes," Asha said. "And also, more than a child. He was born after the war, born during a solar flare storm. Something changed in our DNA. He can feel machines, talk to energy, control systems." Jake remembered the drone Lumo had shut down with a single glance. It all made sense now. "They want him back," Jake said. "Yes," Asha whispered. "To cut him open and study him." Silence filled the room. Outside, the wind howled across the empty plains. Inside, the weight of a decision grew heavier. Jake walked to the control panel and turned off the video. "Then we can't stay here," he said. Asha looked at him with hope and fear in her eyes. "You'll help us?" Jake didn't answer right away. He thought about the life he left behind, the medals in a dusty box, the promises broken in war. "I fought for freedom," he said slowly. "Not for monsters wearing human faces." He powered up the ship, the engine lights glowing weak but steady. "We'll leave tonight," he said. "Before they come back." "Where will we go?" Asha asked. Jake looked up at the stars. "Somewhere safe," he replied. "If that even exists anymore." A soft voice echoed behind them. It was Lumo, awake now, standing at the door. his small hand glowing faintly. "I can help," he said. Jake smiled. "Yeah, kid," he said. "I think you can." The ship shook gently as the engine warmed up. The stars were waiting. The hunters were coming. And the journey had just begun. The stars blurred into long streams as the ship jumped into hyperspace. But even in the silence of the void, Jake Rayner couldn't relax. He sat in the pilot's seat, eyes fixed on the control panel, his hands steady, but his heart was racing. This wasn't just another job. This was a run for their lives. Behind him, in the crew chamber, Asha gently wrapped Lumo in a blanket. The boy had fallen asleep, his tiny hand still glowing softly from the energy he had used. He was peaceful now, but Jake knew it wouldn't last. Peace never lasted for people running from the powerful. Jake leaned back in his chair, the weight of what he had done pressing on his shoulders. He had lied to the company, helped fugitives. Escape, powered up a ship meant for the scrap pile. There was no going back, but deep inside, a voice whispered, "This is who you really are. Not a junk dealer. Not a man hiding from his past. You're a protector." Suddenly the ship jolted. The lights flickered, and the control panel started flashing red. Jake jumped to his feet. "Engine malfunction?" he muttered, tapping the screen. But the readings didn't match a system error. Then a sound came, a sharp beep from the radar. Something was following them. Not a ship, not exactly, a dark object in hyperspace. Locked onto their trail, he switched to manual controls and began evasive maneuvers, but it stayed with them. Too fast, too accurate. A tracker. Jake cursed under his breath. It must have tagged the ship without him knowing. He ran to the cargo bay, where Asha stood wide-eyed, holding Lumo tight. "They found us," Jake said. "They're right behind us." Asha's face went pale. "I disabled all tracking," she whispered. "I was careful." Jake looked around, then pointed at the corner near the engine core. "That panel," he said. "Check it." They tore it open, and inside, a small, insect-like drone, blinking red. It wasn't just a tracker. It was sending signals. Lumo stepped forward, his eyes glowing again. He reached out slowly, touched the drone. The red light blinked faster, then suddenly turned blue. Then dark. The ship went quiet. The tracking stopped. Jake stared at the boy, amazed. "You didn't just shut it down," he said. "You changed it." Lumo didn't speak, but his eyes were calm. Asha touched his head gently. "He feels machines like they're alive," she said. "He doesn't just control them. He talks to them." Jake turned back to the cockpit, but before he could take control, the ship shook again, this time violently. A shadow appeared outside the window. A black ship, sharp like a blade, had dropped out of hyperspace right in front of them. The corporation had sent a Hunter-class interceptor. A voice crackled through the comms. "This is Director Voss of Gentech Industries," it said. "You are carrying stolen biological assets. Shut down your ship and surrender, or we will use force." Jake looked at Asha, then at Lumo. He had a choice: run, fight, or give up. He chose fight. He turned off the comms and activated the defense systems, weak but functional. "I hope this old bucket still has some bite left," he said. The Hunter ship fired first. 2 warning blasts. Jake dodged left, then dropped the ship low. Moving through an asteroid field nearby, chunks of rock floated everywhere, like ancient ruins in space. The enemy ship followed, faster and stronger. Jake weaved between the rocks, using every bit of skill he had left. The ship shook. Alarms screamed, sparks flew. Then Lumo placed his hand on the console. The lights flickered and then stabilized. Jake felt it. The ship wasn't flying alone. Lumo was helping, guiding it, like it was part of him. The ship turned sharper, moved faster, dodged smarter. Jake smiled through the chaos. "You're something else, kid." The enemy fired again, this time hitting the rear wing. Asha cried out as they spun sideways. Jake gritted his teeth and slammed the thrusters. They shot forward, straight into a thick asteroid cluster. The Hunter ship hesitated, just for a second. That was enough. Jake activated the emergency flare system, blinding their sensors. Then Lumo reached out again, fingers glowing. A nearby asteroid, massive, heavy, moved slowly into the hunter ship's path. A crash, a flash, a ripple of sound in space, and silence. Jake steadied the ship, panting. The enemy was gone, at least for now, but so was most of their energy. They had escaped, but barely. In the quiet that followed, Jake turned to look at Asha and Lumo. "Next time," he said. "We need a better ship." Asha laughed softly, her voice filled with both fear and hope. "There might not be a next time," she said. Jake leaned back in his seat and whispered, "Then we better make this one count." Outside the window, the stars waited, silent, endless, and full of danger. The smell of burning metal always brought it back, even years later, even in another part of the galaxy. Jake Rayner could still feel it. The fire, the screams, the silence after an explosion. The ship's hull was quiet now, drifting in deep space, hidden in the shadow of a dead moon. No signals, no movement, no lights, just floating rock and broken memories. Jake stood in the hallway outside the cockpit, leaning against the wall. His hands were shaking, but not from fear, from remembering. The last battle he ever fought wasn't in the history books. There was no flag, no medals, just smoke, blood, and the sound of a child crying in the ruins. He had walked away after that, quit the Galactic Navy, vanished into civilian life, built a lie around himself, junk trader, loner, nobody. But now, with Asha and Lumo aboard his ship, the past was waking up again. Inside the control room, Asha was studying a star map, trying to find a route through unmonitored space. Jake entered quietly, and she turned to him. "You haven't spoken since the chase," she said, gently. Jake didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I've seen ships like the one that came after us. They don't belong to any government. They belong to shadows." Asha nodded. "Yes," she said. "That's what we call them too." Jake walked to the window and stared at the stars. "I fought in the Halon Wars," he said. "Back then, we thought we were the heroes, saving worlds, protecting peace, but we didn't know the full picture." Asha sat down across from him, listening. Jake continued, "There was a mission, small colony, alien species, low tech. We were told it was taken over by rebels, that we had to clear it. But when we arrived, there were no weapons, no fighters, just families, scared and confused. They gave us orders to fire anyway." Asha lowered her eyes. "What did you do?" she asked. "I followed orders," Jake said, his voice cold. He took a deep breath. "And then I stopped. I pulled a child out of the rubble. She had 3 arms, green skin, and eyes filled with fear. She looked at me like I was a monster. That was the last day I wore a uniform." Silence filled the room. Lumo peeked in from the doorway, sensing the tension. Jake smiled at him, trying to look calm. "You remind me of her," he said softly. "The same quiet strength." Lumo walked to him and placed a glowing hand on Jake's. Jake felt something strange. Not just warmth, but a kind of peace, like the boy was telling him, "Without words, you are not that man anymore." Asha stood and placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. "You chose differently now," she said. "That matters." Just then, the ship's alarm beeped, a proximity warning. Jake ran to the console. A small satellite was floating nearby, almost invisible in the dark. It wasn't armed, but it was broadcasting a signal. Isha gasped. "That's a cum drone from my homeworld," she said. "It means others might have survived," she explained quickly. "Before we were captured, we sent a series of emergency drones across space. Each drone held memory data, history, proof of what happened. This one might contain records of the experiments." Jake brought the drone aboard carefully. It was damaged but still intact. They connected it to the ship's system, and a hologram flickered to life. Dozens of images appeared, cages, labs, human scientists in white coats, Asha screaming, Lumo crying, injections, scans, and worse. Jake clenched his fists as he watched. This wasn't just illegal, it was evil. There were also voice recordings, conversations between Gentech officers. They talked about weaponizing the child, about selling his DNA to governments, about creating a new generation of living tech. Jake felt sick. We need to share. This, he said. Send it to someone who can expose them. Asha nodded. There is a man, she said. He used to work with Gentech, turned whistleblower. He lives on Station Vora, under protection. Jake locked the ship's new coordinates. It wouldn't be easy. Station Vora was surrounded by surveillance and corporate spies, but it was their best chance. As the ship changed course, Jake turned to Lumo. Can you help me power the stealth systems? Lumo smiled and touched the console. The ship shimmered slightly, its signal disappearing from radar. Good job, kid, Jake said. Then he looked at Asha. We're not just running anymore. We're going to fight, and somewhere. In the darkness of space, the past began to feel like a weapon, ready to strike back. The ship was floating just above a burning planet, not close enough to feel the heat, but close enough to see the fire. Cities down below were glowing orange. Explosions flickered in the clouds like silent thunder. The planet was dying, and nobody seemed to care. Jake Rayner stared at the destruction from the cockpit. It's happening again, he said under his breath. He didn't know the name of the world. Didn't need to. He had seen this scene too many times in too many places. Behind him, Asha stood with Lumo in her arms. The boy was silent, eyes wide, watching the fire. This was my friend's home, she said softly. She was taken with me. Jake didn't ask what happened to her. The answer was in the smoke. They had stopped here to refuel and reconnect the ship's signal transmitter. Station Vora was still one jump away, but Jake needed to get a message out, now. Before it was too late, he opened the files from the drone, added the video logs, the voice clips, and the test reports. He compressed them into one encrypted package and added a final tag, Urgent Truth, for public broadcast. I hope your friend is still alive. Jake said, He is, Asha replied. He's waiting, Jake sighed. If we send this now, they'll know we're alive. They'll trace it. I know, Asha said. But if we wait, more will die. He looked at her for a long moment, then turned to Lumo. Kid, he said, can you help me make this signal strong? Lumo stepped forward and placed both hands on the console. His eyes began to glow, and the control panel lit up like a sunrise. The signal grew louder, clearer, reaching across systems, bouncing between satellites. Jake pressed send. Message left the ship like a comet. Now it was out there, out of their hands. Jake turned off the comms and backed away. They had just become the most wanted people in the galaxy. Not even 5 minutes passed before the alarm screamed. Signal lock detected. Incoming pursuit ship. Jake's heart dropped. He rushed to the pilot's seat and checked the radar. 3 ships were closing in fast, small, fast and deadly. They're jamming the engines, he said, trying to trap us. Asha looked around, panicked. We can't outrun them again. Then we won't, Jake replied. He activated the emergency launch pod. Take Lumo, he said. Get to Vora. Asha grabbed his arm. No, you come too. There's no time, Jake said. The pod is small. It only hides one life signal. They'll scan for me, not you. Tears welled in Asha's eyes. But you'll be captured. Jake smiled gently. Let them try. He turned to Lumo and knelt down. You're the strongest kid I've ever met, he said. You keep your mom safe. You keep that fire burning. Lumo didn't cry. He simply nodded, then stepped into the pod with Asha. Jake sealed the hatch and launched it just as the enemy ships dropped into orbit. The pod vanished into a field of space debris, invisible to scans. Jake powered up the main ship and flew straight toward the attackers. A wild move. A suicide move. Exactly what they wouldn't expect. The first ship fired. Jake dodged barely. He activated every flare, every decoy, every jammer the ship had. Red lights flashed, Engines sparked, the hull groaned. Then he opened the voice channel. "This is Jake Rayner," he said. "Go. Ahead, send your best. I already sent the truth, and you can't shoot that down." Blasters lit up the sky around him. The ship shook as one wing tore off. Another explosion rocked the rear thruster. Jake smiled through the fire. He wasn't scared, he was alive. For the first time in years, he felt like a soldier again. But this time, on the right side, in the distance, the enemy ships moved in for the kill. Jake closed his eyes, one final breath, one final thought, buy them time. And then, silence far away, in the dark of space. A tiny pod drifted quietly towards Station Vora. Inside, Asha held Lumo close, tears rolling down her face. She didn't know if Jake was alive, but she knew he had saved them. Lumo looked up and whispered, "He's not gone. He's light now," and out there in the stars, the message traveled. Jumping from system to system, planet to planet, showing the truth to everyone. A new fire had started. One they couldn't control. One that would burn through every lie asterisk. The galaxy was no longer silent. It was screaming across border systems and trade routes. News of the Gentech experiments spread like wildfire. Encrypted files, video logs, and voice recordings, all broadcast across black market channels, underground networks, and even official media. The message had reached the people, and with it came rage, but with truth also came danger. The hunters had lost their secrets, now they wanted blood. On a hidden moon near Station Vora, the escape pod landed in the shadows of tall crystal cliffs. The terrain sparkled under a pale purple sky, cold and sharp like broken glass. Asha stepped out first, holding her son close. They had made it, alive barely, but the cost still burned in her chest. Jake was gone, or at least, that's what she believed. She knelt beside the pod and whispered into the wind, "Thank you, Lumo." Didn't cry. He sat on the stone surface, staring up at the sky. "I can still feel him," he said softly. Asha looked at him, confused. "Jake?" Lumo nodded. "He's far, but not gone. He left a piece of himself inside the ship." Asha held him tightly, unsure whether to believe it or not. Hope was dangerous, but sometimes it was all they had. They began moving through the rocky landscape toward an old outpost built into the cliffs. This was where Esha's contact, the whistleblower, had hidden himself. His name was Daryl Mox, a former Gentech data engineer. He had helped build the lab where Asha was once imprisoned, but something in him broke when he saw what they did to the children. Now he used his skills to bring those secrets into the light. When Asha and Lumo reached his bunker, he opened the heavy door slowly. He looked older, thinner, but his eyes still held fire. "You survived," he said, surprised. Asha stepped in, her voice cold. "He didn't." Daryl said nothing, only stepped aside and let them in. Inside, screens glowed with live transmissions from across the galaxy. Protests, riots, politicians trying to distance themselves from Gentech. But it wasn't enough. People wanted action, not apologies. Daryl plugged the remaining data chip from the pod into his console. "This will help," he said. "They'll never be able to deny this." Asha sat beside Lumo, her body trembling from exhaustion. "We've done our part," she said. "Now we rest." But rest didn't last. The ground shook. Just slightly, a hum filled the air, like thunder hiding beneath stone. Lumo's eyes snapped open. "They're here," he whispered. Asha jumped to her feet. "Already?" Daryl turned pale. They must have tracked the signal burst. Outside, a black dropship appeared in the sky, silent and sharp like a blade. They had come for the boy, not to arrest, not to capture, to erase inside the bunker. Panic grew. "We can't fight them," Daryl said. "They'll burn this entire mountain down." Asha looked at her son, then at the glowing console. "What if we don't have to fight them?" She said, "What if we give them what they want?" Lumo looked up, eyes wide. "You mean me?" "No," she said, holding his face gently. "Not you, your light. Asha turned to Daryl. You said Jake left a piece of himself in the ship. Do you still have the ship's AI core? Daryl nodded slowly. In storage, why? Because we're going to finish what he started, she said. Together, moments later, Lumo placed his glowing hands on the AI core. The dark room lit up, pulsing with golden energy. Then, a voice, familiar, rough, warm. Jake. Hey kid, the voice said. Shay gasped. Lumo smiled. Jake's consciousness, not fully alive, but not dead either, had survived in the ship's memory. He was part of the machine now. I don't have much time, Jake said. But I can hold them off. You run. Get the data to the central relay on Vora. No, Asha said. We fight with you. You already did, Jake replied. I'll handle the rest, outside. The enemy ship began charging weapons. Inside, the AI core glowed brighter, hotter, stronger. Lumo placed both hands on it and closed his eyes. Together, they began to rewrite the system. Not to escape, but to overload the entire outpost. A final flare. A final message. Asha kissed Lumo's forehead, tears falling. I love you, she whispered. I know, he whispered back. Then the bunker exploded into golden light. A pulse wave rippled across the moon's surface, and with it, every screen in every system across the quadrant lit up. The message was unstoppable now. Gentek's secret was no longer a secret, and in that sacrifice, the galaxy remembered what it meant to be human. Not because of Jake's species, but because of his choice. The galaxy did not change in a day, but it did hold its breath. Somewhere in the deep silence between stars, a flare had gone out, and from that flare, truth had spread like morning light through the cracks of a ruined world. The name Jake Rayner became more than just a man. It became a whisper, a spark, a beginning. On Station Vora, a city built into rings of metal and glass, life continued. Ships came and went, politicians argued, traders haggled. But below the surface, something had shifted. People talked about what had been done, about the lies uncovered, and about a boy who glowed like a star. Lumo walked quietly through the station's central garden, a patch of green built for peace in a place meant for business. He was older now, still young, still small, but older. The glow in his hands had dimmed, not because it had weakened, but because he had learned how to carry it better. Beside him, Asha sat on a bench, watching the clouds swirl outside the glass dome. Her face was calm, but her eyes still carried the weight of everything she had seen. It had been months since the blast, since the world learned the truth, since Jake Rayner gave his life, or part of it, to save them, but not. Everyone believed he was gone. Some said they saw him in signals, in old machines that suddenly worked again, in ships that didn't break when they should have. Jake Rayner had become something more than flesh. He had become a memory etched into the wires of the galaxy. Lumo sat beside his mother and asked quietly, "Do you think he knew?" Asha looked at him. Knew what? That he'd become a story, Lumo said. That people would tell his name to others. Asha smiled sadly. No, she said. Jake didn't care about being remembered. He only cared about doing what was right. Silence filled the garden for a moment. Then the wind shifted. A voice came from behind them, rough, familiar, human. I always hated being talked about in the third person. Asha froze. Lumo's eyes lit up. They turned, and there he was. Jake Rayner, alive, different but real. His body was leaner, scarred, patched with synthetic parts. His left eye glowed faintly with cyberlight. But his smile was the same. Asha stood up slowly, not trusting her own eyes. How? She whispered. Jake shrugged. Turns out, getting half your mind stuck in a ship's eye doesn't always kill you. Some rebels found the wreckage, pulled me out, and spent months putting me back together. Wasn't easy, but I'm hard to kill. Lumo ran forward and hugged him without a word. Jake knelt down and hugged him back. I missed you too, kid, he said, his voice rough with emotion. They sat together for a long time, letting the silence speak. Finally, Jake looked at them and asked, "So what now?" Asha smiled. Now? Now we help rebuild, because across the galaxy, things were changing. Gentech had fallen, not completely, but enough. Laws were rewritten, survivors were protected, and a movement had begun, not one of violence, but of memory, of legacy. Jake didn't want to be a hero, but he had become one, not because of strength, but because he chose to care. And Lumo, the boy who glowed, would one day lead others like him. Not as a weapon, but as a light in the sky above Vora. A new satellite blinked online, its name, the Rainer Beacon, a symbol of resistance, of truth, of sacrifice. A message written in every language, floating on its surface. Humanity is not where you are born. It is what you choose to protect. And in a quiet corner of the station's marketplace, a bartender looked up as a man walked in, wearing an old leather jacket and a half smile. The bartender blinked. "Thought you were dead," Jake grinned and said. "I was, until I found something worth living for."